How's it going, everybody? I hope you're having a great day wherever you are in the world. My name's Keegan Larwin, a New York City-based 3D artist and designer. Today, on The Art of Games, we're taking a look at the one and only Overwatch. Maybe one of the biggest games in the world right now. It's a fantastic game, first of all, and the art especially is fantastic. And today we're gonna be looking at a lot of character design, a lot of environmental design, and we're gonna take a little tiny advanced dip into some texturing. Because just going through this hero gallery, there's a lot of interesting details to note with texture. So, without any further ado, let's jump right in. So one of the things that makes Overwatch great is its many, many amazing characters. So let's just go through and look at some of these, and I'll point out some initial thoughts, but I really kind of want to get into the use of texture and just generally how Blizzard, the company that makes Overwatch, for those who don't know, is so amazing at creating character. Probably, honestly, better than any game out there right now that I can think of. So let's just jump right in here, take a peek. So right off the bat, you'll notice that a lot of characters have these kind of clothing elements here. You know, I should use the mouse to point, shouldn't I? They have these nice, oh geez. They have these nice like clothing elements here, so when you rotate the character, you see kind of this move and rotate. And what this is, I actually did a little research. What they're doing here, and this is the case for most games, is you have the base character model here, and then this cloak is kind of a separate mesh that sits on top of it that has a little bit of dynamics programmed into it, so when you move it, it kind of sways with the way you're moving it. And that way you don't have to worry about because when you're doing dynamics with a full big complex object like this, you have to start worrying about are the pants gonna accidentally move? How do you decide what part of the mesh do you restrict the physics to? So having just a separate mesh for the coat, almost as if they're wearing a coat, which they are, so it works out, is a really, really, really easy and great way to kind of get this nice, cool look. I love Ana. This character is great. Having a grandma sniper is like the most fantastic thing in the world. Cool, let's keep moving. Ashe, great character design. I especially love this guy, and you can see once again on his belt here as we turn it, you can see the dynamics pushing it around, also at the bottom of the jacket there. We have some really, and this will come back a little bit later, but we have some really nice kind of, metal is something that's very hard to make look correct, because the thing about metal is it's extremely reflective. So if you create a metal texture in literally any engine, be it like Redshift or Arnold or Octane, like a ray tracing software, or if you even do it in like a physical renderer or like a game engine renderer, like something in Unity or Unreal, you can make an extremely reflective looking metallic texture. But the thing is, it never quite looks like metal. It just kind of looks like a chrome ball. But when you apply it to an object, you're like, this just doesn't look right. And the reason for that is because most metal is never pure metal, if that makes sense. I feel like I just jumped into an alternate reality where I'm talking about metal music. But most metal is scratched and it's worn and it's rough. And the thing about and the other thing about metal is also it all reflects differently. The way it reflects colors and the way its index of refraction is different from material to material. So there's actually a lot that goes into metal besides just making it extremely shiny and reflective. So for this guy, you can see all these little details. And part of it is the metal isn't always the same color all the way through. You look at something metal, especially if it's not treated or if it's kind of older looking, like this is supposed to look, you get kind of discolorations throughout it, which you would generally put into the color or albedo channel. And then also you'll notice as I rotate this guy around a little bit more, especially when you see kind of these specular highlights hit, you can see that it's not all highlighted. There's like this, it's probably way too small to see on the compression, honestly. But over here you can kind of see there's like these, scratches maybe you would call them. Like, little chunks. Oh yeah, you can totally see it as the light kind of reflects off of the metal. You can see that there's little tiny scratches just up and down there. And that's something you plug into the roughness channel of your textures, just to give it that worn feeling, you know. Right when something comes out of the box, that's probably the only time that it's super crystal clear. But if something's been used at all, I mean, look at this. This character is a battle-worn guy, you know, so he's got scratches all over him, and that's all done in the texture. So it's just a really nice thing to note. As for like Ash herself, I actually really want to look at this model. Very nice. Love the gold. Love kind of all the inlaying there on the right here on the base. Just looks really good. And again, you get all these nice little scratch details. It just creates a gun that feels like it's being owned. You know, if you play like a Counter-Strike or something, you look at the guns and they're all just kind of like shiny and generally the same. The thing is, with these weapons, they have a lot of character because they've clearly been used in a certain way. You know, an interesting note is this barrel has a scratch on this side and a nearly identical scratch on this side. Now, did they just mirror the object? Did they just use like a symmetry deformer or something and mirror the object over? Or is there a story reason why that scratch exists? Because all the scratches aren't symmetrical on either side. So clearly they left those two identical scratches in for a person. Maybe it's the way the gun's pulled out of the holster that creates that scratch. You know, it's these little tiny pieces of detail, like attention to detail, that Blizzard is always focused on, that really makes these games absolutely exceptional. So moving on here. So it should be clear that I haven't played Overwatch religiously for a while, so I have no idea who this guy is. Baptiste. He's got a pretty cool looking character. I love how his legs are ginormous. This is some like Gears of War stuff right here. Like, this guy has the most jacked thighs I've ever seen. I like, you get a nice reflection map here on the scarf. It might be hard to see in the compression, but as you rotate the scarf, you can see it's just picking up a lot of nice little texture details as I rotate it, which is really key when texturing something, especially a character model, that you get these little tiny touches right. Because if you're modeling like a table or something, like, obviously the table can have some character and you can have some scratches in it, but nowhere else than in character design do these little tiny touches affect the entire perception of that character. You know, like take Bastian, for example, you know, crowd favorite. All these little tiny touches to his character inform kind of, like, from the animation to the texture. Like, first of all, look at his kind of position, you know, his shoulders are wobbling a little bit. It looks like he's, you know, like run on diesel power and he's just like shifting around. I mean, he looks old. He looks like a machine from an old time, which he is in the Overwatch lore. And, you know, he's got the cutest bird whose name I cannot remember. I'm so sorry. If you're an Overwatch fan, please let me know what the bird's name is. He's got this cute little chippery bird, kind of like almost a youthful look to the bird in its animation, bouncing around. You know, it's this bright color to contrast to Bastian's military drab here. And it's a really nice kind of juxtaposition between the two. There's like the youth and vibrance of the bird, and then kind of like the old, you know, rundown military drab of Bastian. But the thing is, Bastian is kind of especially if you watch the animated short, Bastian he's not a war machine, you know. I mean, technically he's a war machine, but his character is almost more of a peaceful, more of a gentle giant kind of situation, which is just something I love about this character. Bastian, when this game first came out, when I played it in beta, Bastian was all I played, because A, if you watch the show, you know I'm a sucker for robots, and B, he just has like such a cool, I mean, look at this animation. This is so good. Just all the pieces, parts just wobbling, wiggling randomly. It just, I mean, this thing looks like it's gonna fall apart at any second, which I mean is kind of the point, because it's Bastian's ultimate, obviously. Just so many nice touches on his design. I love the detail here in the back of the legs. You can see, obviously, and this is something that will be a recurring theme, Blizzard tries really hard to make sure that all of these robots look like they can actually animate the way they animate. You know, a lot of times you'll see a robot which it's just skinned onto a generic person with a T-pose, and like things are bending where they shouldn't bend. And here, especially with all of his animations, it really just looks, let's see if we can get a victory pose going here. Oh yeah, it's just the pose, they don't animate into it. But look, everywhere where he's bending, there's a joint that dictates where he should be able to bend. I say he as if Oh my gosh, the birds in the cannon, that's so cute. I've never noticed that. I say he as if Bastian is some kind of binary gendered thing, but Bastian's just an it. It's a robot, so I will address it as such. Man, I love Bastian. It's so great. Just love the wiggling, and yeah, look at every single one of these joints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All of these joints move just as they're supposed to, and it just creates this really beautiful character. I also love this touch of the handle rattling right here. Very nice. Okay, let's jump out. I could stay on Bastian forever. Let's jump to another fan favorite, Diva. Once again, great robot design. I love the skinny little chicken legs. You know, you get this design that you see mostly in birds. It's very bird-like bottom, but also kind of human-like. It has like this codpiece thing, and then on top you get this like nice beetle spaceship-looking thing. I mean, it's just an overall fantastic design for a robot. And then Diva herself kind of being like, you know, this small, slim, you know, slippery character that fits into this like hulking robot. I mean, it's so cool. And the thing is, they're not pulling the juxtaposition they did with Bastian and his bird, whose name I can't remember. They kind of feel, you know, in a lot of ways, the robot reflects characteristics of Diva, and Diva reflects characteristics of the robot. And by that I mean, the robot, yeah, it's a big hulking robot, but it's also lean. The skinny legs, you know, that look like they're built for running, the boosters, you know. This robot is a pretty nimble, just like Diva is. So even though there's like contrast here with like small girl, small woman, big robot, they also reflect on each other's character quite a bit. And I think that's really nice and creates an amazing synergy. So I know I was gonna talk about materials more. So as far as materials go, we still have these nice reflection maps. The thing is with the metal on this robot is it's so much more worn. And you can really tell because check out the roughness here. And when we talk about roughness, a good way to think about it is how glossy or how unglossy something is. So if you look at the reflection here, whoops, let's go back to our robot friend. If you look at the reflection in this, the reflection of some light, whatever the HDR map is that they're using on this reflection is huge. It's really, really big. And then if you contrast that with the glass here, the reflection is a little bit smaller. Keep doing that. And that's because this texture is extremely rough. This is very rough metal, almost more like a carbon fiber sort of thing. A great example is if you're ever holding an Xbox controller, this surface is extremely rough. When you look at this reflection of the window, it just kind of creates a general gloss, a general like one big specular highlight across the whole thing. But then when you look at this shinier part, you can see all the different little reflections. You can almost see the entirety of this room reflected in these little bits here. So if you have an Xbox controller, it's a great way to differentiate between glossy and rough. This is glossy, this is rough. They may not be equally reflective, but they're pretty close. I mean, this is a very reflective surface. It's just extremely rough, as where these elements are extremely glossy. So when I talk about glossiness and roughness, that's what I'm talking about. And it's an important thing to note because it's something that people really don't always get right in textures. I mean, for example, look at the end of these guns here. It almost looks like glass actually, but that's a straight up chrome glossy material. And then when we look at, you know, all of these little carbon fiber metallic bits, I mean, and when you look at this this cloth here that's covering the leg joints, it's not glossy at all. It barely has any reflectance on it. The reflection channel is like basically zero at that point. So yeah, great design. Doomfist. I mean, here's a great example. Look at how it's a fairly glossy surface, but again, it's so rough that you can't really make out details in the reflection. What I really love is their use of bloom and glow is really nice here. When you see this orange light here pass through this reflection, you just get this nice kind of haloing of the lens, this nice little glow. And again, as I've said before in episodes of this show, bloom is something that a lot of people overuse, and it might be a little hot here, but again, in this style of game, it's not meant to be photorealistic. It's meant to be stylized, obviously. It's got that comic book look, you know? So this nice, shiny, camera real looking glow is just so nice. And really just like highlighting just the huge massiveness of the arm. So good. Let's look through some of this, some of Doomfist's skins here. Oh, love the blue. This is NYXL colors. Oh, cheetah print. So you'll notice on this cheetah print glove compared to like this one, look at that, a ton of roughness. This thing is barely reflective actually, kind of showing that, is this supposed to be like an animal skin cover? You know, there are all these things in the texture that tells you something about what the material of the object is without you even having to recognize it. Like before this, you might not have known the difference between a glossy and a rough texture. But you could have inferred just with like your intuition of being a human being that goes out into the world and looks at things that like, oh, this is definitely not metal on the outside of him. You know, like this belt isn't made of metal. This thing isn't made of metal. And you kind of can tell that just by looking at it. But really on the back end, there are all these parameters in the texture that you have to change around and switch to trick your brain into thinking, oh, like that's what that texture is. Because really, these textures don't exist in real life. These are approximations. These are something trying to create the illusion of a texture. And we're getting really close to, I love the tattoos. And I mean, look at the chalky, you can tell how chalky it looks just by like it might be an opacity map on the like tattoo texture here that's either overlaid on top of him or it's completely reskinned, I'm not sure. Okay, let's keep moving. Oh, so cool. Love a good cyborg. Oh, this one's even better. And this is, oh, this is good too. Okay, gotta stop getting sidetracked. Genji, crowd favorite. Love the little textures on here. You get some nice looking, in the reflections down here, you'll notice that the reflection is interrupted a little bit. And that's not always roughness. A lot of time it's done with a bump or a normal map, which is essentially, you can almost think of a bump or normal map as dictating what the like micro surface level texture of a texture is. So like what we would describe as texture, like when you feel a rough surface and you're like, oh, this has a nice texture to it. You know, you're talking about the feeling of your hands, the tactile feel. And those little like tiny micro bumps also impact the reflection and how the texture looks. So metal generally doesn't have a very hard normal map. Usually it's more about like the scratches and stuff like that. But when it comes to things like fabrics or something like this, like especially check out this highlight on Genji's leg here. And you start to see, yeah, even on Genji's little butt here, you can see these reflections, just it kind of shaping and moving, and then like there's shapes over top that aren't being reflected upon. So let's just check out some of the skins here because they're all cool. Love this one. You'll notice something about Overwatch hair is that it always looks like it's wet, and we'll get back to that, but just something to point out. Love the all white. Love this one. Man, it's so cool. Oh, I love this one. Great cyborg again. I mean, I guess Genji's already a cyborg type of dude, but love the Oni mask, demon mask. Kendo, so good. I've never done kendo. I have friends who do it and say it's a blast, so I feel like maybe I should try that out. Oh, this one's so cool. Look at this glowing emblem right here, this Iron Fist stuff. And the smoke sprites coming out. I mean, whenever there's a subtle particle system attached to a character, just love that. This one's great with I don't know what it's called. I like to call it a Gundam tiara. But you know me and Mecha, just love that stuff. Oh, we got emotes. There's a lot of glow on that sword. This is one thing I really do like about a lot of Overwatch stuff is the use of trails. You can see the tip of the sword, there's a little trail being traced. So good. These animations just have so much character. It's so nice. Genji's just got this like crazy intensity about him. Like he's almost overly intense, you know? Genji feels like he's trying really hard at all times. That was good. This is a very Genji dance, I love it. All right, let's move on, Hanzo. Just taking a gander here, obviously you can see how nice and metallic and also dirty his gauntlet looks here. You also notice a lot of these characters have like nice patterns on their pants, where it's like a very subtle, like one piece of the pant is more reflective than the other, and they use that in a pattern to make it look kind of patterny. But really, the color doesn't look too much different on these. It really just looks like how much it's reflecting that's different. Though honestly, it could be the color. Junkrat, another fan favorite. Personally, I'm like not a huge fan of Junkrat's appearance, and it's not that I don't think the artist did a good job. I think they did a great job. It's just that I'm not a huge fan of like the Rage kind of Borderlands like desert crazy person aesthetic, which I guess isn't true because Mad Max Fury Road is like, I love that aesthetic so much. So I should really just think about more in terms of this. But yeah, I mean, just the little touches on his character here, like the little strands of hair that are on fire are so good with like a slight emission on them. It's just so good. Actually, let's just check out. I know I've been checking out too many skins here, but I'm just so curious, you know. Sometimes I feel like a lot of times they do almost a better job on some of the skins than they do with. Oh, the clown is perfect. He looks like the clown from Twisted Metal. If you are an old person, you remember a game called Twisted Metal where they would drive cars into each other and they'd blow each other up, and there was a clown. I cannot remember his name, but that's totally what this reminds me of. Hardcore Twisted Metal vibes. Love the Jester. Oh, this one's good. This one's good. Even the bits of hay are also burnt. I mean, it's a great character touch because it's like, clearly this guy has blown something up way too close to himself like 3 seconds ago. You know, that's the vibe they're giving off with this. And it's so good. And I love how this has like the John Deere sort of tractor look. Like, clearly Junkrat's a guy who, he's worked the fields a few summers for sure. Is good. Ooh, Mad Scientist is great. Love these little bits of lightning on these Tesla spheres, Edison sphere. Can't remember. If you remember what the name of these things are called, you let me know. Oh, the Lifeguard. It's great because you can take his expression here. You can take it from, you know, like insane, the Joker straight up, to like Mad Scientist, like classic Mad Scientist expression, to just like cocky, kind of douchey Lifeguard. Oh, it's so good, Beach Rat. And I just love how he's got the SPF 50, because he's a pale guy, SPF 50 here. Just like these amazing touches, like it's just pure genius when you look at it. Oh, Krampus, that's so good. It's so good. Man, Blizzard, it's the fact that they haven't made an animated movie yet on these characters is just insane to me. Lucio's one of my favorites. Love the music he's bumping at all times. Love his like rollerblades. I mean, these sweet like mecha pants. Like, let's just square up for a second. When is Target gonna start selling sweet mecha pants? Like it's all over every game. The kids love it. I love it. We need more mecha pants. It's like the goth pants from like the early 2000s, late 90s. Like that's what we need now, but mech pants. Like they don't have to do anything. They just have to look cool, you know? Capoeira is so good. Oh, I love this one. Hardcore Deadmau5 vibes. Or marshmallow, depending on your choice of flavor. Oh, this one's great. So yeah, take a look at how the different roughness levels of all these different metals. They're all kind of, they all have their own individual properties, and even though they're all metal and they're all highly reflective, since each material has its own different take on how metal it looks, how metallic it looks, I should say. It really creates this palette of textures where the whole thing isn't chrome, you know, it's a bunch of different pieces parts, which is really part of that cyberpunk like Victorian aesthetic. You know, you have like the brass and the iron and the copper all working together, you know, and with crazy tubes to kind of create this singular look. So that's great, that's good stuff. McCree. McCree's design is great, like everything from the Banff belt buckle here to just the way his profile looks in the back with this poncho that's like slightly torn up. I mean, it's really good, and you get this nice reflection off the gun as you turn it. Like he doesn't take good care of himself, but dang it, that gun is shiny as heck. So good. And his like cyborg arm just adding to like the sci-fi element. Just love McCree. I think McCree has some nice skins. Oh yeah, this American one almost reminds me of the, can't remember his name, the guy used to stuff himself into cannons and like blow himself away. Can't remember. Oh, this Scrooge is so good, and it like fits with his character is the thing. This gambler gentleman. Ooh, mystery man. I love all the beach ones, they're so good. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. Mei has such great character design. I love that one of the great things about Overwatch is that not only are they trying to be inclusive of every person's nationality, like so far in the game they've tried to represent as many nationalities as they could, which is really great to see, but also like different body types. You know, you have like the skinny tiny Diva to, you know, the slightly bigger Mei, but they don't usually in media, when you see someone who's portrayed as not skinny, they're portrayed as like disgusting. But Mei doesn't look disgusting here. She just looks like a person with a different body than Diva has, which is something really admirable, and it's something that most of the game industry hasn't really caught up on. And the fact that Overwatch is doing it so beautifully, and Mei has a million fans online. Just go to Tumblr and type in like Mei forever, and you're just gonna get pages and pages and pages. RIP Tumblr, by the way. So it's just really great to see Blizzard focusing on inclusivity. It's not even like it's trying to be PC or politically correct. It's just trying to make sure that everyone who plays their game feels like they're represented, which is super dope. Also love this beekeeper outfit. So good. Oh, this is cute with the pumpkins. They really did a good job with the down jacket here, with all these different little pouches. Now you can see on the edge here that when you actually look at down material, I wish I had a coat or something with me, it's the patches all kind of have like this kind of pillowy look where they all kind of extrude out. Oops. And when you look at this here, it totally looks like these are extruding out. But when you look at the texture from the side, it's not, it's 100% straight here. And how they did that is just cleverly texturing it, you know? So a lot of the shadows are baked in. I'm not sure this render engine particularly, I think it's proprietary for Blizzard, but a lot of render engines, both in games and in like real-time ray tracing, or, you know, render engines that actually render frame by frame, you have what's called an ambient occlusion pass. And ambient occlusion, it's a long story for a different day, but essentially it just dictates when you're not ray tracing or don't have an amazing like a shader that can dictate where the shadows are. Ray tracing basically just tells you, you know, what areas need shadow that our shaders don't have enough, like aren't casting rays to tell their shadows. So like back here, for example, this shadow being cast on, well, this one's moving actually a little bit, but these kind of shadows here in the cracks and the crevices of this texture, those aren't actually there. Those aren't shadows being cast by the light. Those are shadows that are baked into the material in the ambient occlusion pass. It's a little bit harder to see on characters because they have to move so much, so they have to be clever with how those shadows are cast. So like this machine here, it's a separate mesh attached to her. So you can see that right here, it's casting shadows on her ever so slightly. Yeah, you can see the shadow right here, this dark spot as we rotate, passing through. So yeah, anyway, this down material, even though it's not actually extruded, a combination of the normal map and the ambient occlusion just kind of creates, and also where the highlights are being created. You know, it looks like these highlights are being passed across a deformed surface, but they're actually not. They're passing across a flat surface, but the way they built that reflection map gives you the illusion that it's actually this 3D object, which is incredible because, as we all know, in video games, reducing polygon count is literally everything. So if you can reduce your polygon count and use these cool texture tricks that just add to your art style, like, you're golden. You're absolutely golden. All right, let's pop out of this. Mercy, love me some Mercy. Mercy's I know they nerfed her in the past years, but her character design is so cool. Mecha angel wings, so good. Love it. And I love that she's got like this like turtleneck thing going on that like covers the back of her head. She's got that like undercut look, super cool. She's someone who, if I saw Mercy in real life, I'd be like, that person is too cool for me to talk to. That's not what I want. Let's check out some skins. Oh, this one's nice. You can see that this is a great example of roughness versus glossiness. You know, on her dress thing here, you can see all these highlights that are kind of they're blurred and smudged. But on the, I don't want to say embroidery because that's not what it is, but on these little like flourish elements here, these flowers, the light is A, way brighter, so you know the reflectivity is higher, and B, it's a lot glossier because you can actually pick out little more details in the environment on top of that. So really nice touch. Looks great, great looking skin. I love this Norse skin, it's so cool. And how the wings change with each style, it's just so solid. Oh, that's a good one. So this might be a good time to talk about emission channels. When you're talking about ray tracing, an emission channel, essentially you apply a mask to parts of the area and determine what parts of that area glow. And with ray tracing, that glow, that's actually light. Those are rays that are being cast from that material and shooting onto the ground and bouncing up. The thing about rendering real time, not real time ray tracing, but rendering in real time in these rasterized rendering engines, is that your emissive textures don't cast light on the ground. Watch as Mercy rotates here. On the ground around here, if this were ray tracing, you'd be able to see this light casting downwards. You'd be able to see the shadow that this is casting down. You'd see a double shadow from A, this big hero light here, and B, this little emissive texture. When you look at these, which are also supposed to be emissive, they'd be casting an orange glow on her head. And a lot of times they just pre-bake that light in. But it's a hard thing to do and it doesn't work in all situations, you know, nighttime and daytime. So when it comes to games and rasterized rendering, obviously, these things can't cast light, but what they can do is create a nice little bloom effect in the camera. So you'll notice that you'll see that this background isn't straight background, it's kind of yellowish, and that's because of the glow coming off of this. Sometimes it's hard to spot glow, but it's generally, watch the gradient from the background changing from the background color to, you know, the hue of whatever's glowing behind it. So this emission texture on this is really good. Yeah, you see this purple one. You can see it flaring the lens even though it's technically not casting any light. Oh, this is such a dope skin. I feel like I need to jump back into this game just for the skins. The witch is great. Love these Batwing, the Batwing wings. Wow, they pulled out a lot of really great textures from Mercy. I haven't seen some of these. Man. We're gonna skip a few of these. This is a solid one. You'll notice something interesting about some of these characters, her and Widowmaker too, is that they start to get a little bit more photorealistic looking. You know, before, if you look at, yeah, check. So you see the metal textures here. They almost, these little tiny flavors and colors and the roughness channels all feel kind of painted on. You know, it feels like someone went in and digitally painted it in like Procreate or Photoshop or I don't know what they use at Blizzard. Probably some cool proprietary tool. It feels like very hand painted. It doesn't feel like it was taken from an actual texture map in the real world. But when you look at this metal texture here, it looks a lot more photoreal. And though it does have this nice wearing here at the corners, it's just a really nice touch. even though it does kind of have these like hand-painted looks, like these like stains and stuff on the metal, it does look a lot more realistic. It looks a lot finer, a lot sharper. And that's a very interesting thing to note, because you start to see where the styles are a little bit inconsistent, just a very small amount. Because the most reflective metals didn't quite look this real in some of the other character models. And though you do still have a lot of like painterly looking marks here, they're so much more detailed. And maybe it's just because she's super glossy, but it's just something to note. Let's just take a look at some of her skins here. I don't want to go through this whole thing looking at skins, but they're just so cool. This one's great. This one's also great. Love a cyborg. You know this about me, love a cyborg. Reinhard, great design. Love a giant robot man. So can you guys tell me, is Reinhard a man in a robot suit, or is he an actual robot? Let me know. Roadhog's got some great design. Again, he's got that Rage Borderlands look that I'm not a huge fan of, but the Audi belly button with a pig tattoo, it's just ridiculous. And the Road Rage license plate for a belt buckle, ridiculous. Sigma is a great character. He's kind of got this Tywin Lannister look about him. You know, he's got this rather unamused look. Let's check out some of his animations. He doesn't emote too much. It's just very prim, very proper. Very much looks like a Tywin Lannister. I'm pretty sure they had they have this nice Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter looking skin. I once had a script writing teacher who would not stop talking about Hannibal Lecter. So now to like compensate for how much he talked about Hannibal Lecter, I try and not talk about him. And look at me now, ranting about him. Sombra's great. Something that I did learn is that so all of the hair in Overwatch is actually a separate mesh, which part of it is, I think, so they can give it dynamics. So when I turn the camera here, I guess hers isn't really flowing. But also they use special channels called cube maps, I'm pretty sure it was, which they also use in the new Spider-Man game, to dictate how the hair looks like it's flowing. And I said earlier that all the hair in Overwatch looks like it's wet. And that's partially because it's just it's always extremely glossy and extremely reflective. The thing about normal hair, like my hair here, is it's not 100% opaque. When light passes through my hair, it scatters outward and like this. And you can kind of see through it, and it kind of makes it, it transmits that light in different directions, which is something that is really hard to do, which is why hair doesn't really look great in most video games, is because you can't have that scattering, because you need to cast a ray in order to interpret where that light's going. So the best thing they can do usually is to simulate, or like look at what the casting of rays looks like, and then essentially texture the hair to look like it's scattering, even though it's actually not. So you have a little bit of that going on here, but really Blizzard have really chosen to forego that route, and instead they really just went with a more cartoony, but still good looking texture. I mean, it's a very glossy looking thing, and where they really sell it is this cube map and this irregular reflection here on the hair that kind of juts up and down like that looks kind of like wet hair. So it's a really good look. I also, once again, shapes in the leggings. I love a good triangle tessellated pattern or hexagon tessellated pattern. Honestly, I just love any shape you can infinitely tessellate that's not a square, because if it's a square, it's just a grid. Symmetra's great design. Once again, check out the hair. So it sways back and forth. And here on this, it's got some nice twisting here on the texture. And this hair is probably, I actually looked at a mesh for Symmetra. And her hair is really just consistent of like maybe 10 or 11 ribbons that each have maybe like a dozen polygons, which is super low footprint. They've just textured it so cleverly that you can't see where those polygons begin and end. So just super clever with hiding their polygons. I mean, it's literally just like a series of tries, most polygons in games are tries. I don't know if I can remember a mesh that was using quadratic polygons, but yeah, I mean, I looked at this mesh, and the fact that they textured it to look so good, it's just incredible. Oh man, what a character. Not too much more to note here. Can't see a lot of like fake scattering on the hair like I was just talking about. You can see his metal is super rough. It's seen better days. He sanded this way down. Tracer's iconic, an iconic look. You've got this emissive channel here with the little glowing hologram. Holograms are super easy to do in games, believe it or not. It's really just like a plain texture, slightly deformed, animated on top. And since it's glowing, you don't really have to texture it. It's just kind of there as a glow. So when you ever see holograms and you think, that must have been hard to do, no, super easy. Just animate it rotating, moving back and forth, in and out of the other one. Looking at this here on her chest, if you didn't know already. Just so good. And she's got these like legs of like the Roadrunner, you know, super cartoony. You can tell she's super fast. Just love it. Let's check out some of the Tracer skins because she's a fan favorite. Why not? Let's check them out. Love this one. Oh, love this one. She's like a roller derby participant. Love the more emo looking thing. That's good stuff. Nice. All these beach skins are just like top tier, not gonna lie. Oh, the elf is so good. She's got that like pixie Twinkerbell look to her already, so just kind of throwing her in a similar skin is super solid. Love the big hoodie. So cool. Vandalism Tracer. Cool. So Widowmaker is another one of those examples of like her texture feeling hyper realistic. I mean, you have an extremely metallic looking texture here. It's almost like what you would see on a car. Cars are super glossy. I love. I like matte materials generally, especially like a very reflective matte material. Whenever you see it on cars, you're just like, yeah, it's kind of gross. You know, cars look so great because they're so shiny and glossy, you know, like a marble, like a jawbreaker, and you just want to like put your mouth on it, which is especially weird for me to say when you're applying to this situation. To be clear, I don't want to eat Widowmaker. But you'll notice in her like jumpsuit thing here, you know, how reflective that is and how the normal map is just kind of creating these nice little speckles. It's just a really well done texture, but again, way more photorealistic than a lot of the other textures. And when I say photorealistic, I don't mean it's actually photorealistic, but it's more in a photorealistic direction than the other textures are. It's a great weapon too. It's got her seal there on it. Winston. Yeah, look at the difference between Winston. Winston's got these kind of metal, glossy carbon fiber plates. And every single one of these marks here clearly looks like it's been illustrated on. But when you look at Widowmaker, you don't get those marks. It's super shiny. Her butt literally like has a blinding reflection when you rotate it. Winston. He doesn't have a shiny thing on him except for, yeah, these back plates a little bit. Wrecking Ball, love him or hate him. It's questionable gameplay mechanics, but great looking character model. Oh, it's so good. Love the sphere design with the crab legs that clearly are meant to fold in. You can see the place where you can see the shape of the legs perfectly jigsaws in here, and that's just brilliant, you know? I mean, it's easy to make a model that just folds in on itself. I keep doing that. Folds in on itself, and it doesn't really make sense where the pieces go, but the fact that every piece here has a place, it's just like, attention to detail is super solid. I haven't seen any of these skins, so I'm just gonna look through it really quick. Oh, love the wood finish. That's so nice. Oh, the mohawk. Those are solid. Oh, yes. Pumpkin is so good. You get this nice emissive texture. And again, all of these details here, these details are all painted on maybe in the color pass. There might not even be an ambient occlusion pass. This might just be in the color pass, literally drawn in shadows to save lighting. If so, that's brilliant. Just brilliant. Just look at Zenyatta really quick because I love, oh, I've got a custom skin on. Really, the most striking thing here is the animation of these balls, how they're like all in sync, but all in sync, but also all not in sync, kind of rolling around in different ways, but all having still the same general breathing in and breathing out, almost matching. Yeah, I think 100% matching with his up and down. It kind of gives him just a little bit of sense of life that doesn't make him feel so robotic. That one's so good. A little racy, but good design at least. See, this one I think is a little bit more appropriate because it's not approximating a person or ethnic group. It's approximating like the deity even ethnic group. So, Kraken is so good. Oh, the Nutcracker and the nuts. Oh wow, that's so good. Okay. So let us not look at my career profile because you would laugh. Let's just jump in here and take a look at some of the environments.
Traveling to Volskaya Industries.
Cheers, love! The cavalry's here!
So yeah, you'd call this probably Greek revival architecture. Yeah, you got these trophies and stuff. You know, an actual Greek look is a little bit more not simplistic, but the Greeks had a very pretty like solid aesthetic and kind of stuck to it. It wasn't quite so. You know, we're almost pushing like the Art Nouveau situation here, which is super prominent in the France map. But we're in Russia here, and basically I think it's Russia or Ukraine or something. I mean, look at that. It's got to be Russia. Oh, look at these giant robots. So obviously like the Greek revival style just like is everywhere in the world, and I teleported myself off the cliff. Classic. Are these real people I'm playing with right now? What even is this?
Wait for me!
Traveling to Route 66.
Well, I guess we're being forced to yet another map. This one's, I like Route 66 because it's a great approximation of like almost the Europeans' idea of the American West, you know? Like if you've been out west, you're like, where is everything? And then occasionally you like stumble upon like, oh, that's the Grand Canyon, you know? So something I really like about Route 66 is just like, it really plays into that Team Fortress 2, you know, feeling of just like the American West and the gold rush and, you know, there will be blood kind of situation. So yeah, let's just take a little bit, take a gander. You know, this frontier town. Even though like these are like very like modern chairs and stuff, you still have this old frontier looking situation. There we go. You get these like future Harleys here, which I don't know if anyone's heard, but Harley Davidson is like now like completely knee deep into making electric motorcycles. So maybe these hover Harleys. You know, these might not even be Harleys. I don't really know enough about motorcycles to know if this is a Harley. I don't think it is now that I'm thinking about it. So I'm just not gonna talk so I don't anger any bikers. If you're a biker, let me know what kind of style that bike is and help me with my obvious ignorance here. Military train wreck, clearly some kind of ambush. You know, just again, setting a scene with your environment, you know, telling a story with your environment. So people playing this game, honestly, probably don't care. They probably just, I mean, there's, you jump in, you're like, okay, train wreck, I'm focused on the objective, you know. But someone who really cares about story would take a second to look up and see, okay, there's this huge suspended bridge, or not suspended bridge, there's this huge arched bridge here, you know, crossing this canyon. Maybe the Grand Canyon? I mean, the Grand Canyon doesn't really look like this. It's a lot bigger, but crossing this gorge, and clearly a train was going across this, and clearly there was some kind of explosion. Now, was it an accident? Well, these look like military trains to me, so if you put two and two together, you can tell that there was some sort of ambush here, and that's where this battle is taking place. Perhaps this is stolen cargo taken out of the train, you know, and it's like you can put that story together just by reading the context clues of the map, you know. A lot of people think that level design is really about you know, that the only reason to design a level is for gameplay. But that's just 100% not true. You know, you get a lot of these. Again, I hate to hate on Counter-Strike because I played it all the time. But Counter-Strike just has a lot of clinical levels that are like designed with gameplay first, and then story second. And maybe the story of Counter-Strike is simple. It's just like terrorists are holding someone up somewhere, and the counter-terrorists have to go in and stop them. You know, from planting a bomb or rescuing hostages or whatever. But it ends up feeling very clinical, and I think that's a lot of the reason why people are drawn to Overwatch so much, because an important part of any game, and really any narrative experience, whether it be partially narrative or like where the narrative's hidden, like in Overwatch, or actual narrative, is giving the player a sense of meaning. And if you're just kind of going in and doing the same, going into the same arena that has same kind of like sterile, meaningless thing, you devoid your experience of meaning in a lot of ways. And you're really more just playing it as a sport as opposed to like an interactive experience. And the great thing about Overwatch is there's an Overwatch League. There's a huge, very well-funded esports league centered around this game. But this game also appeals to people who are more casual because it has this focus on story. You can run through this level and play and are terrible at it like I am right now, and still get something huge out of it because you feel like you're a part of this kind of grand story that's bigger than yourself. And that's something that Overwatch just really, really exceeds with. And honestly, I'd like to do more episodes on Overwatch because there's just way too much to do. And me just like running around levels getting my butt kicked is not doing anyone any favors. So let me just wrap up here and just by saying that I think Overwatch is a model of what games, maybe not in their visual aesthetic, but in their accomplishments, are going to do in the future. And I really believe that the future of gaming is going to be like this, going to be something that appeals to both casual players and professionals who want to, you know, get into esports. And the balance that Overwatch strikes just in everything is just so amazing. And it's something that I could talk on at length. And if you haven't already checked it out, it's a great podcast on the Carpe Ludus Network called Lore Party. I'm pretty sure they have an Overwatch episode. They have a lot of people there who know a lot about Overwatch, a lot more than I do. So if you're really interested in the lore and the story part of things, go check that out. Again, that's a Lore Party podcast hosted by Abu Zafar and all their other amazing hosts, created by Abu Zafar, I should say. It's really great. Gotta plug that. Maybe I'll make an appearance one day, but again, I'm not great at knowing anything about lore, so there's that. So again, thank you so much for watching. Next time on Art of Games, I'll see you guys later. My name's Keegan Larwin. Have a great day. Bye.